the government launched another major attack on the Kang base, held by the Myanmar forces. By December 17 of the same year, the Myanmar government forces were forced to withdraw from the Namsan battlefield after a prolonged battle with the rebel forces. This continued until the end of 2022. Despite implementing the four-cut strategy to quickly defeat the enemy's fighting potential, the Myanmar military's effectiveness was unclear, and it also weakened the rebel groups more intense and music activity. The government army continued to implement its previously outlined four-cut strategy, but with greater intensity, combined with executions targeting areas suspected of harboring insurgents. In response, opposition groups also conducted large-scale battles involving coordinated efforts from various factions. The Myanmar Civil War saw an increase in battles between numerous insurgent groups, mainly occurring in some areas of San Francisco and Camden states. The PDF forces themselves faced resistance from some local armed forces. However, this did not prevent them from continuing to fight against the main enemy, the government. On 2023, Air Force deployed a battalion to capture a government army base in Kanivu, Saking district, seizing several automatic rifles and grenade launchers. On government forces, clashes occurred simultaneously with a series of rebel groups in the resort town of Ma Thungan. Keen rebel force targeted the government's 6th Light Infantry Division headquarters. The two sides engaged in combat for several days, both suffering casualties. 2023, 11 resistance group, including PDF group, jointly launched drone saging attacks in the early morning, inflicting casualties on government forces stationed there. To escape the passive position of the rebels, the government launched an artillery attack on La, a town in northern Myanmar serving as the capital of the Kachin Independence Army. The attack inflicted significant casualties on the Kachin forces, both soldiers and civilians. On 2023, the National Democratic Alliance Army and the TLL, in coordination with the Arakan Army, decided to launch a campaign operation with the main objective of maintaining territorial control and abolishing the regime. Mobilized troops for the campaign, engaging the military government on multiple fronts. The also responded to the campaign by joining forces with the KNLA to attack directly the town of C in the Karen region. They fought fiercely against the government forces throughout the following days. Operation 1027 continuously witnessed successive successes, with numerous towns captured and many government soldiers and officers surrendering. A rebellion broke out on November 15, 2023. The MNDA Army surrounded and attacked the town of Lao Cai, capturing several important outposts. The battle was fought at CC. In the initial phase, the government forces maintained their position, thanks to air support from above. The next day, the MND changed tactics, launching separate attacks on government soldiers, forcing them to retreat and abandon their positions north of the city. By 2023, the MND was completed, following the capture of the Twin Buddha statues outpost and the establishment of control over southern Lao Cai. After a short period of peace talks on December, the parties involved continued fighting. The Myanmar Air Force carried out 3 airstrikes targeting Myanmar's objectives at Tin Keng, just north of the city gate of Lao Cai. Government troops stationed there also shelled until the next morning. But this did not prevent the Myanmar forces from capturing several border crossings with China. Some local border guard units surrendered to the National Democratic Alliance. They had essentially completed the capture of the city, ending the battle with the government forces. Thus, 2023 marked a setback for the Myanmar military government, as most of their counter-strategy proved ineffective against the increasingly strong insurgency of the opposition. Furthermore, they lost many sensitive strongholds in Tao Dan, allowing the rebel forces to continue reinforcing their troops and proactively conducting large-scale counterattacks. This left the government increasingly in a passive position. Entering the first month 24, the last government soldiers operating at the Laokai command post surrendered to the rebels, signaling a new phase of the civil war. And an increasingly difficult situation for the current Myanmar government. 3 days after the Laokai incident, the Myanmar Air Force conducted an airstrike on the town of Tam Mu in the Sing region as a move to intimidate rebel groups. However, this did not prevent the forces of the Northern Alliance, especially the Arakan Army, from attacking key areas in Rakhine, Chin, and
San State.
On January, fierce fighting broke out between government forces and the Northern Alliance along the border separating Myanmar and the Indian state. The Arakan Army successfully gained control of the port town of Pai in Rakhine on a joint force commanded by the Karen National Defense Organization launched an air assault. A drone strike killed 2 military commanders on February 8th. The Arakan forces continued to draw attention by successfully defeating a government light infantry battalion after a fierce engagement. From then until the end of April 2024, the Arakan forces continued to lead the Northern Alliance, achieving a series of important victories, including defeating the 540th Light Infantry Battalion attack Southeast District, the Little Bang, Rakin, and the town of Pua, Kachin region. The government forces were equally impressive, with a series of victories in the Kachin and Mandalay regions. Many government aircraft also suffered heavy losses against these two forces. The government's personnel losses increased steadily. The situation became so serious that on May 8th, 2024, the military government suspended all work permits for men abroad and prohibited men of military age from leaving their controlled areas. Between May and June in 2024, the government forces continued to face difficulties against the attacks of the Arakan and Kachin rebels. They continued to lose control of villages, airports, and towns. Specifically, on the Kachin Independent Army captured the town of Sadan, leading to the military government losing control of all border trade routes in the K9 border. In the Arakan forces confirmed the successful capture of Thanan Airport, further resulting in the military government losing control of all border trade routes in the K9. Around the same time, the rebels also conducted demonstrations with rocket launchers and attacked several towns. On August 8th, successfully seized the Northeast Regional Command Headquarters in Labangsan, a highly sensitive area in Myanmar. The encirclement by the rebel forces tightened around the government forces. It is not difficult to see that the civil war in Myanmar is very unique, with its main form of warfare being, these were small-scale battles between rebel groups and local forces against government forces. We didn't see any high-intensity, short-term battles aimed at decisively resolving the battlefield. Instead, there were only isolated skirmishes. This reflects the inconsistent war objectives of the factions, as well as the complexity of Myanmar's political system and ethnic issues. Myanmar's transformation from a leading prosperous nation in Asia to this dire situation cannot be overlooked. The military, after successfully taking power, failed to develop the national economy, unlike the military regime of Park Chung-hee in South Korea. Furthermore, they failed to build a centralized government capable of absolute power. As in North Korea, the military government's incompetence in the current situation is evident, but the rebel groups themselves also harbor ethnic and religious differences, and none of these forces have yet demonstrated overwhelming strength in their war objectives. The remaining island has the potential to impose its dominance over the entire nation after the war ends. So it's difficult to imagine where this nation will go beyond a cycle of violent division. However, that's just my perspective. From a military standpoint, what are your views? Please leave a comment below. Music's applause.